Welcome back, everyone. All you fantastic little people, you. This is Pokemon Cawps, and we continue our inappropriate adventure. If you missed us last time, while we denounced white people, and particular white people who find decency, not common sense. What are you talking about? I don't know, because I've already forget his name. What was his... Logan Paul. It's such a plain white person name. I keep forgetting it. Logan Paul. I should really write that down. No, because after 1 minute into this video, we're not going to mention him anymore. We're going to move on from him, because 2018 is... Well, it's not been great. Let's be honest, but certainly it's much better than Logan Paul. We're on our way to Slateport. If you did miss us last time, we did start that slogan, important woman. And it seems to have caught on, even if that douchebag at first was very skeptical of our idea. So, yes, it can happen. Change can happen. Is this the feminist part of the show already? It's always the feminist part of the show. And I called it the show, which I think confirms the notion that Cool Trainer Crow commented on the last video and said, this is like a YellowShy podcast. And then, you know what? Yeah, it kind of is, actually. I never thought of it that way. I thought of it as, let me style my videos so that I can talk as much as possible and hear my own voice, because I love the sound of my own voice, because, no, I'm kidding, of course. I'm not like that. But maybe I am. I said I was only going to talk about that white guy for a brief minute, because I really can't even stand to look at him. He didn't apologize. Let me rephrase that. He sent out an apology video. So let this just be a little bit of a lesson, maybe a learning curve, not a learning curve. Maybe you can learn from this is that if you ever have to apologize for anything, whether it's on YouTube or not, to friends or anything, maybe don't talk about yourself very much. Maybe don't ever reference I didn't realize how famous I was, and I was only trying to get views and likes, and, that was kind of his apology. If you have to mention how influential or famous you are in your apology, you're not doing it right, so just try again. It sounded like Louis C.K.'s apology, and that was kind of gross. We crashed this party house in this video. We also, quell gang activity in Slateport. Aqua and Magma are roaming the streets rampantly, and we'll have to see, but so far I would have to say the creator of this game has a very unsophisticated idea of what gangs are and their danger. It just seems like it's about killing, and that's all that matters, but that really sums up this game in a nutshell. So are you going to talk about the game at any point, like while you're going, no, you're visual learners. You can figure it out what's going on. I wanted to, because with such great tragedies of human indecency that I didn't write it down. I forget what's his name. Doesn't matter. I'm sure some person, probably in the Renaissance, said something like this, because it sounds like a quote that someone from the Renaissance would have said. But with great tragedies come opportunities for inquiry. Now that didn't sound good. In my head, it sounded fantastic. I'm naturally curious, and I was kind of flummoxed that I'd never actually heard of the forest before. We're not going to call it the Suicide Forest. We're going to call it what it is called, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing it. It's the Aokigahara Forest, which is where that rich white guy was, and the Broham, and I because I didn't know about it, it kind of not angered me, but it drove my curiosity to find more about the forest. It's quite fascinating, and I don't mean fascinating in some other ways where I might use the word fascinating, because it's a very complex mix of emotions I had when I was researching about the forest, because in one way the sort of aura that surrounds the forest is kind of mystical and arcane, but at the same time the emotional weight that it carries from the kind, from its reputation and from the people that are there, it's harrowing, and it was a really conflicting mix of emotions that I felt while I was reading about it and researching it. But I thought I'd just share some of the things with you. Like I said, my inquiry question, I mean, why I was driven so much to find out about the forest is because I wanted to determine just how unethical it was for a white guy with blonde hair and blue eyes wearing some weird lime green toque thing. I mean, that was distasteful at the very least. No, I wanted to know more about it, and it's quite fascinating. Like I said, in that weird, mystical, emotionally heavy way. It's very popular. Oh, look at this, Rose McGowan's evolving. Yes, and Rose McGowan is always evolving. Just so you know, we're back to the feminist part of the show. Like I said, it's always the feminist part of the show. And maybe I'll stop calling it the show. Cool Trainer Crow, the Shy Podcast. Welcome to the Shy Podcast. Again, I send you the comment back, but you know, if this is going to be a podcast, we'll welcome guests here. Cool Trainer Crow, you would be the first guest, undoubtedly. The forest, where it is, it sits on the edge at the base of Mount Fuji, which is the highest mountain in Japan, and because of the mountain, so like magnetic field, a strong magnetic presence there, which I mean is what gives it that strange, arcane, sort of mystical aura, is that it screws up GPS and compasses, which makes it an alluring place to go, so that you can't find your way back out of the forest. And the trees, it's also very dense in certain pockets of the forest, which make it hard for people to find their way back. They can get lost in the forest, and they can, and if they cry out for help, the leaves and all the foliage of the trees would kind of quell the voice down, so that, you know, it's hard to respond or get help if you decide to have second thoughts. And it's a big problem in Japan. I'm not too knowledgeable in their economic crisis they had in the late 1990s, and I don't think you really want to know about it because that's boring. But that has driven up rates, because it's driven up poverty rates in Japan, and so suicide rates have gone up in Japan. And it is I think it's one of the sort of lower end, you know, we use the white people term developed country, so it's among some of the higher, more developed countries that have high suicide rates, or one of the highest of the developed. Between 2013 and 2015, a local government report said that more than 100 people committed suicide in the forest. Over 100 people between 3 years. And that does not include attempts at suicide. So, it's a serious problem, and they're very adamant that they try to not, because it has a sort of reputation, that they don't want that reputation to spread. So they don't want people to, trivialize or sensationalize the forest. Nudge, nudge. Famous YouTuber. And there was also a horror film, I think I've read. I don't watch horror films all that much, so I wouldn't have known. It was called The Forest, I think, and probably sensationalized the death part of it. We don't want to do that because it gives that parallel, that since many people have committed suicide in the forest in Aokigahara, that there's this idea that if you won't die alone here. Right, and that idea, they don't want that idea to spread, because then that's, it might influence people's decision, which is a cloudy way of making your decision when you should be consulting with loved ones. And but the government has tried, has made some efforts to try to stop this forest from being notorious for this. There's a big sign up in when you first go in, because it's actually a public place, right? It's a tourist. There's hiking trails and things, but it's just there's dense parts of the forest there is some, you can hike in certain areas, and there's a big sign. Imagine you're on you go to the forest and you're a tourist, and you see that sign when you walk in, and it says, in Japanese of course, but it says, life is a precious gift, quietly think about your parents, siblings, and children, and please don't suffer alone. Imagine seeing that. Like I said, harrowing. It's just like absolutely mortifying in a way. They've put security cameras in the entrance of the forest. I don't know how effective that is. That seems like kind of a feeble effort on my part, or in my view, because I don't know how you're going to discern between people who are there to be tourists and people who are there to, contemplate their lives. But the one thing I found really artistic almost, or powerful, was they have ribbons. In some of the more dense parts of the forest where it's easier to get lost, they have colored ribbons that sort of lace and intertwine amongst the trees so that you can find your way out based on a certain color of ribbon. And I thought that the artistry of that makes that immensely more powerful than security cameras, I suppose. So that's kind of what I learned about the forest, and I wanted to share that because it's certainly still a hot topic, and I think that's I don't want to give myself credit or a pat on the back or anything, but I think that's the proper way to talk about the forest and to not film yourself laughing about dead people in there. So I wanted to put that clear, and also because there is something about coming up in Canada anyways, and I'm sure it'll spread into America, as Americans are continuing to look up to Canada for any kind of happiness at times, or stability, things like that. So I did want to mention this. Bell is a telecommunications corporation in Canada. Now, you know me, I very rarely, and probably never, have a good thing to say about a corporation, in that they're greedy, and the only thing that they ever do is to give to people is they will give them a small slice of the chunk of the pie of avarice that they have, so that you feel like they're doing good things, but they're just being... I don't understand what you're saying, Shane. What's avarice? Oh, sorry, it means greedy. But Bell, once a year, they do what's called Bell Let's Talk, and it's a hashtag that runs on Twitter and Facebook and all that. You probably have seen it in the past, but Bell Let's Talk is it's a opportunity for people to use the hashtag and talk about mental health awareness and personal struggles with mental health. And the idea is just to have enough people talking about mental health that it can help people consult their own mental health, because it's so common. We all deal with mental health, whether it's within our own lives or someone close to us. And it gets the talk going, and then every tweet or whatever that's used with the hashtag, Bell will give a donation. So I just wanted to read off some figures for because it's on January 31st this year, and that's coming up. It started in 2011. Last year, over social media, there were 131 million interactions using the hashtag, and Bell has donated millions of dollars for mental health awareness, and so has various individuals who donate lots of money on the day. Let's see here. In total, it started in 2011. In total, there have been 729 million interactions on social media. Over $7 million has been donated to for local community fund grants. $2.54 million of that chunk of that $7 million goes to grants for children and youth, $646,000 for indigenous communities, which should be way, 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 way higher than that. $1.25 million in the support of military families. In total, $86.5 million donated to mental health initiatives, and almost 500,000 children have been reached through the programs that are offered or supported financially by Bell Let's Talk. And the most important one, I think, is that 4 to 5 Canadians, and I know you think cynically, I think cynically about anything that starts with a 4 to 5, like 4 to 5 dentists recommend brushing your teeth, or whatever. But 4 to 5 Canadians report that they are now more aware about mental health issues because, not necessarily just because of Bell Let's Talk, but certainly the initiative is the basis for their inquiry to be more concerned and curious about how mental health applies. To me, like I said, mental health is so common, but it's something we don't talk about in our society. But I think it's everyone deals with it, whether it's, like I said, personally or someone close. My brother deals with depression. Is certainly, I mean, I'd be naive to say I don't have my bad days, but we all do. But it's not easy, but it's something we have to talk about. It's just sort of a norm that we've created in our society where we don't make it seem like it's appropriate to talk about it, but it really is, and it needs to be a permanent thing. I mean, it's great that there's a day that Canadians and now I would say it's not just Canadians, but that they've devoted a day on social media to talk about mental health awareness, and always you'll see a bunch of tweets that will say, well, we can't just give it one day, we have to keep talking about mental health awareness. And it never happens, though. It really never does happen. It seems to go away, and then we sort of cave into this sort of silence, and that emotional weight of the Aokigahara forest is very similar to this sort of heaviness that we feel uncomfortable talking about mental health. And so anyways, it's a really great initiative, and I thought because it's coming up in 2 or 3 weeks here that I would bring it up. It's Bell Let's Talk. They have a website you can check out. They probably have many social media accounts you can follow, but I'm not that hip. I'm your grandma, remember? My phone has like the giant 91-year-old grandma-sized fonts, right? I don't wear bifocals though, but I'm probably pretty close. My vision's pretty bad. I mean, that's probably going to happen pretty soon. You can visit their website. It's letstalk.bell.ca, and you can read more about it. More specifically, some of the initiatives and things that they donate money and raise awareness for. It's incredibly important. It really is, especially for young people. It's something that, I mean, it's not like it's one of those, like, social issues that, like, only adults should be concerned about. Not that there is any social issues that children and teenagers shouldn't be aware about or concerned about. But certainly, you probably have friends that are suffering with mental health, and it's something you always need to be aware of and be educated about, so that you know how to respond and deal with these and make things better. We don't often think of mental health when we think of, like, social injustices in this world, or ways to make this world better. We often think of in terms of class or race or gender, but mental health is a really widespread problem, and I think I'm not comparing mental health to misogyny or anything, but anyways, so I wanted to talk about that. And so if you're wondering about the Rio story, because like, you're probably thinking, my friend told me you were funny, what happened to the show? I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I don't really care at all. This was probably a heavy, serious discussion, but I think it's important. So the other thing I want to talk about, because we've been talking about classic films, and we kind of talked about, I think it was part 2, we talked about Mel Brooks, and now we need to redefine what we find funny when we look back to old films, and what's considered funny today. And we've also, of course, been talking about misogyny and all the likes, and so I thought it was appropriate to talk about Woody Allen, because he fits both of those. We bring both misogyny and Hollywood together to give you Woody Allen. Woody Allen, if you don't know, is a movie director, for an actor too. He often starred in his own films, and they really were, the following trope was very common in Woody Allen films, was that, and not that it was uncommon in Hollywood to have, like, the male try to, conquest over the woman sexually or whatever, but Woody Allen did it in a very different way, in that he was always like this lackluster, like, not the most handsome person in the world, so, like, love didn't come easy to him. But that, in a way, all that really did was force his hand at this sexual conquest even more, which I think was even more disturbing. I first came to Woody Allen's films. As a kid, I was a huge Gene Wilder fan. I mean, who wasn't? Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory is timeless. And I don't necessarily know what Gene Wilder's view on women were. I don't think that matters so much, and I only bring that into question, I suppose, is because of the amount of films that he worked with Mel Brooks with. And so if you don't know about Woody Allen, then he's obsessed with teenage girls, even in his old age now. And this was written in the Washington Post yesterday. We're recording this on the 5th of January. I don't know when it's going to drop, but this was written in the Washington Post on the 4th of January by Richard Morgan. It's a sensational piece, and you really ought to read it. Even if you don't care about classic films, I think it's important to read. In the headline is, I read decades of Woody Allen's private notes. He's obsessed with teenage girls. And I'm just going to read the start of it, and then you can read the rest. Woody Allen is making a new movie. Just kidding. I'm not sure what that lead's all about, but anyways, he doesn't make new movies, but he's editing a movie right now called A Rainy Day in New York, which is about a college-age love triangle, and it could, like any of his movies, instead be titled, quote, A Woman Gets Objectified by a Man. This, in his view, is the pinnacle of art, its truest calling and highest purpose, especially when it involves young women who are compelled to lackluster men merely by the gravity of the men's obsession. Are you following? I hope so. I know this because I've seen his whole career up close, going through all of his drafts and scribblings, his psychological and physical cutting room floor that exists in the 56-box, 57-year personal archives he has been curating since 1980 at Princeton University, which was a university he did not attend. According to the staff at the library's Rare Books Wing, I'm the first person to read Allen's collection, the Woody Papers, from cover to cover, and from the very beginning to the very end, Allen quite simply drips with repetitious misogyny. Woody Allen, who has been nominated for 24 Oscars, never needed ideas beside the lecherous man and his beautiful conquest, a concept around which he's made films about Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Manhattan, journalism, time travel, communist revolution, murder, writing novels, Thanksgiving dinner in Hollywood, and many other things, because that one idea bore so much fruit for his career. I see what you did there. Allen's archive is a garden of earthly deletes, decades of notes and stories and sketches of the prolific filmmaker exiled, for whatever reason, to the Shadowlands, in between wholehearted commitment and half-hearted possession. His screenplays are often Freudian, and they generally feature him, or some avatar for him, sticking almost religiously to a formula. A relationship on the brink of failure is thrown into chaos by the introduction of a compelling outsider, almost always a young woman. Sometimes this produces a gem, such as Match Point, the film. Often it does not. Ellen Page, who was featured in 2012's To Rome with Love, called working with Allen the biggest regret of my career. And I see we're out of time, but we're just going to talk here for about a minute, because I'm not aware of how many minutes we were into the video. That's how little I've been watching the screen, viewers. You can read the rest of it. What I wanted to say was that what Woody Allen did was, these were sexual crimes he was committing in his films, but he concealed it. He dressed it up, spiced it up, as if it was art, and somehow trying to say that it was complex, but it really wasn't. And all my point is sort of tied back to what I was saying about Mel Brooks, is that we need to, when we look at classic films, or anything in history for that matter, we have a problem, I think, in society denouncing it, because we can't get past this idea that we like or don't like something. It doesn't matter if you like Woody Allen's films or you don't like Woody Allen films. Either way, we need to find middle ground somewhere there so that we can together agree that and be critical of the fact that his films are dripping with misogyny. Same with Mel Brooks. I mean, I love Mel Brooks' films. I think they're fantastic. I think the scene from The Producers with Springtime for Hitler, I think Blazing Saddles is good. I think Young Frankenstein is quite funny. It's one of my favorite films. It doesn't mean there's no sexism in it. And I have no problem still liking Young Frankenstein while admitting and being critical of the fact that it's misogynistic. And I think we have a problem doing that in our society because we think once we're critical of something, that means we don't like it. And we have to distinguish that. And that's all my point is. So sorry for that was the boring, preachy stuff. In fact, there was really not, I don't think I said one joke. Unless you thought the Logan Paul stuff was funny, which I don't really anymore. I remembered his name, though. I didn't have to think about it for 5 seconds. Anyways, we're in Marvel City. This has been an excellent time to end. It was an excellent time to end a minute ago, as I'm just standing here in front of the path. We'll check out Marvel City next time. Thank you so much for listening and watching. This is YellowShy saying goodbye. I will see you and hopefully hear from you next time or sometime in between. I don't know. I'm terrible at ending videos. Bye.